Welcome everyone to Chapter 2 of the Wealth Management Essentials course. In this chapter, we'll be looking at ethics and wealth management. So there are 6 different learning objectives that we will be going over. First off is ethics in the financial services industry. We will be looking at different types of ethical dilemmas and how to solve them. We'll also talk about the code of ethics, trust, agency, and fiduciary duty, and also what can happen when an advisor ignores ethics. So to start, what is ethics? Well, it's a set of consistent values that guide individual behavior. And ethics, it is objective. So basically, you can think of ethics as just a set of consistent values that is quite often just based on society. People can sort of tell what's right from wrong, and that is ethics. Ethical principles help guide behavior in situations where no regulation specifically applies, and these principles may be influenced by public opinion, consumer demand, or advocacy groups, and just society in general. Now, there is a key difference between ethics or ethical principles and values. Values are beliefs, not facts. They are long-lasting, but not necessarily unchangeable. They guide individual and corporate behavior and goals, and the key that distinguishes values versus ethics is that values are subjective. People have all kinds of values, and sometimes they might value something more than something else, and everyone's values are different. Whereas ethics, it is sort of just this set standard in society that people traditionally follow. Now, before we get into the different types of values, I just want to look at the rules-based regulation versus principles-based regulation. So there is a key difference between the two, and I have this photo explaining the differences. So first off, with rules-based regulation, that's when the rule is explicitly stated. So if you think of on the highway, you see the speed limit sign, maximum 100 kilometers per hour. There is a rule where you cannot go over that. If you are, you can get fined. Whereas another option would be to have principles-based regulation, which is on the right side. There is no speed limit, it just says drive to conditions. And this does happen sometimes. There is actually a highway in Germany where they don't have a speed limit. They have a recommended speed, but it isn't against the rules to go faster than that. They just say, drive to conditions as fast as you want, but just be safe. So there are 2 different ways to think of rules. One is you have that set rule-based regulation. The other is sort of principles-based. It's based off of values, and you just hope that people do the right thing. Now let's look at some different types of values. So first off, you have your end values. Now these represent the goals towards which we strive for, and they do influence how we act today to achieve tomorrow's goals. So some example of end values might be family security. So your goal is that you want to make sure your family is secure, and to do that you might want to make a lot of money, have a good career, make sure your family has a home and security with that. And so there are a lot of different means values which will help you get to family security. Some other examples might include self-respect, fame, social recognition, or sense of accomplishment. Then you have your means values, and these are the actions we take in the present to achieve a future goal. So for example, ambition is a means value. Ambition will help you potentially reach a sense of accomplishment. It could potentially help you reach family security and self-respect. If you have honesty, that's a means value. It will definitely help you with self-respect and social recognition even. So having a unified value system is when your means values and end values reinforce and support each other. When they don't, that's when some trouble can occur for both individuals and corporations. Now let's take a look at some different types of ethical dilemmas when your values could overlap and contradict each other. So first off, there is the right versus wrong ethical dilemma. The situation tends to be unambiguous and the right choice is usually quite clear. The decision can be made based on a variety of different tests. One could be the legal test. So, does the decision break any laws? Is one choice clearly illegal and that you shouldn't choose that one? There is the smell test. Does your intuition tell you the wrong decision? This sort of goes back into ethics. You sort of do know right from wrong. And third is the front page test. So would your reputation suffer if the decision were to be broadcasted on national newspaper? And the mom test is quite similar. Would you want your mother to know about your decision? So you can use those tests to try and help you solve a right versus wrong ethical dilemma. Now, the right versus right dilemmas, they are much more difficult to solve. There is four main kinds of right versus right ethical dilemmas. First off is the truth versus loyalty. So this is when honesty clashes with commitment. An example might be you recommend an in-house product and the client asks if it is the best of its kind on the market. And say you just represent a firm that can only choose from those investments. Well, truth demands that you tell them that there are potentially better products out there. But loyalty and commitment demands you to recommend and support the in-house product. So you can see that in this dilemma, both truth and loyalty contradict each other, and you'll have to pick one or the other. Next, you have individual versus group. So this is when the rights of values of an individual conflict with those of the group. An example is a firm actively solicits retired investors and advertises its sensitivity to seniors' concerns. But they also offer a dividend-paying mutual fund that the company distributes, is highly valued and relied on by a small group of these older clients. However, the fund is only marginally profitable to the firm. And so the management's dilemma is whether to distribute and allocate scarce resources to the broader groups of clients or focus on that individual group and still make sure they can offer that fund. You also have the short-term versus long-term dilemmas where immediate needs conflict with future goals. An example would be an investment firm that has the option to offer a new account, say the FHSA. This new account is an extremely helpful financial planning tool for younger clients by helping them save up for a down payment on a home. The account would cost the firm a lot of money to administer and set up, therefore would never directly make them much money in return, also due to the nature that the account isn't usually open for very long, doesn't have much money in it. So management must decide whether to prioritize their immediate needs of minimizing costs or their long-term goals of offering the best financial planning tools to clients. There is also the justice versus mercy dilemma. This is when fairness and equity conflict with compassion and empathy. An example is you are the supervisor of a likable new employee with good attitude and strong work ethic. They're just starting out in the industry. You notice that they are doing a lot of trading in a large automobile parts manufacturing company, both for them and their clients. When you ask them about these trades over coffee, they say that they heard about an imminent strike from their father, who is the president of the union representing the company's employees. Although the strike vote has yet taken place, his father is certain the plant will be shut down, likely for a long time. The employee seems unaware of the rules against insider trading, but your firm has strong penalties for insider trading, including termination. So with this dilemma, you can obviously see the conflict there. You either need to choose justice and terminate them based on the insider trading, or you choose mercy because you like the employee, they have a good attitude and strong work ethic, and sort of give them another chance. And so there is that conflict there. Now, resolving these right versus right dilemmas, they can be difficult, but you can use these different principles to try and solve them. So one is ends-based principle. So the action chosen should result in the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So in case of the employee, you could terminate them based on all the investors that would have been disadvantaged by the insider trading, whereas if you don't terminate them, well, then the only people that are benefiting from that is the new employee and also potentially their clients. Rules-based principle, the action chosen should follow the rule that deals most effectively with the situation. You also have social contract-based principles. The action chosen would create harmonious relationships within the group, and personalistic principle, so the decision that is most authentic to the decision maker as a person. So just going through this ethical decision-making process, you can see that you first have to recognize that there is an ethical issue. You need to determine whose ethical issue is it and gather the facts. Now, if it is a right versus wrong issue, you can do those 4 different tests. If it is the right versus wrong issue, you can just make the decision, and that's that. If it's a right versus right dilemma, you need to identify the different right versus right ethical dilemmas that it could be, and then apply the resolution principles, make the decision, and of course, reflect on the process. Now, code of ethics. So it is a set of rules that specifies the rules and behaviors within a group. It provides benefits such as a clearly stated, formal, and updatable guide of what is considered appropriate behavior. A code of ethics can be referred to when an ethical dilemma arises. So this is quite helpful. It helps people make decisions when you're sort of in that gray area or an ethical dilemma arises or whatnot. For a code of ethics to be effective, 4 elements are necessary. It must be supported by senior management. Employees at all levels must participate in its development. Implementation must include training and reinforcement among all employees. It must be reviewed periodically and updated when necessary. Another key learning objective about this chapter is distinguishing the concept of trust, agency, and fiduciary duty. So trust, it is earned through specialized knowledge. It's also earned through a well-regulated industry. The client realizes that your industry has a lot of restrictions and regulations. They can sometimes feel more comfortable about investing. A client's first approach, so when you first meet the client, that first interaction can build some trust. Disclosure of information, and then influence over decision and share of control. So you want to ask them, what they think and sort of give them some influence over the decision. Agency, it is defined as a relationship in which one party is authorized to bring another party into a contractual relations with a third party. So what that means is basically that it's an agreement listed on an account application and allows advisors to buy and sell products based on the verbal instructions from the client or the client's agent. Usually it's a power of attorney, or it could be a trading authorization given to someone else. Fiduciary duty is a pretty important concept for financial advisors. You have the fiduciary, which is the person in whom the trust has been placed, the advisor. The beneficiary is the person to whom the trust is owed, so that would be the client. And the fiduciary role carries with it the highest standard of care, and the fiduciary relationship is one of confidence and trust. So the role may be in connection with the care of assets or with a position of responsibility for the personal affairs of others. In such relationships, the beneficiary has a reasonable expectation that the fiduciary will act in his or her behalf and best interest. So a fiduciary should not profit at the expense of the beneficiary, essentially just saying that you're acting in the best interest of the client at all times and never taking advantage of them. Now, just taking a look at IROC's investigation procedures and enforcements. So this is if a complaint was made or some of the the rules were broken or whatnot. This is the investigation process. So first off, there is the case assessment. So initial review is done to determine whether sufficient evidence exists warranting the opening of a formal investigation. If it is warranted, they move on to the investigation to perform a collection and review of relevant evidence that establishes the breach in IROC's rules. If that's okay, or if they proceed with that, they go on to the prosecutions. If there is evidence of criminal activity, a referral is made to the appropriate securities commission, regulators, or police. Then you have the disciplinary hearing. So this is a formal hearing that will take place before an IROC hearing panel consisting of an independent chair and 2 independent industry members. A settlement hearing is when enforcement staff and the advisor agree in writing on the rules violated by the advisor. A contested hearing is when the advisor does not admit to the alleged violations of IROC rules. The hearing panel decides whether IROC has proven its case against the advisor and determines the appropriate penalty when it's a contested hearing. Penalties include a reprimand, fines up to a maximum of $5 million per contravention, or an amount equal to 3 times the profit or loss avoided, imposition of conditions of registration, and a period of suspension or a permanent ban. So finally, we'll tie it back into the 6 learning objectives. So if you do go through each of these 6 objectives, you should be able to have a pretty good answer based on the information that we went over. I hope you all found Chapter 2 helpful, and I will see you all in Chapter 3.